Yo, Ice Cube, the bills cannot be that high, man. You did not need to go along with whatever the writers or the directors were telling you to do, man. You should have denied this script because what were you doing in this entire movie? What was this entire movie supposed to be? Why did you even accept this role, man? And even though this movie is, of course, not going to destroy Ice Cube's legendary career as a rapper and as an actor, but bro, this movie right now is staining Ice Cube's 2025 run because, bro, War of the Worlds is probably the worst movie I watched this entire year, and it's probably one of the worst movies I have watched in the last 5 to 10 years because this movie has an interesting premise. Do not get me wrong, this movie's premise is pretty interesting, and I'm going to assume that this movie has probably been done before by different studios and different productions and different companies. I'm pretty sure this War of the Worlds story is not a new story, and it's probably a story that has been done in media before, but this adaptation of War of the Worlds in 2025 was so ass because it did not make any sense, and to be honest with you, it could have made sense. And the premise of this movie is pretty interesting on paper because if you remember the Justice League animated TV series, right? We all loved that series as a kid. That was my favorite series as a kid. In fact, the entire DCAU was 10 out of 10 as a kid. And I'm bringing up the DCAU because if you remember Justice League episode 1 and you remember the first threat that the Justice League was going up against, they were going up against the Imperium, and after Superman and Batman was done doing their investigation, we saw these meteors coming down from the sky and crash landing into various parts of the world, but these meteors were actually these alien-like creatures called the Imperium, and they now grew into these tall, gigantic, skyscraper-like monsters, and they were just destroying buildings, killing people, destroying everywhere. The tall, gigantic monsters in the Justice League show, they produced these beams that completely destroyed buildings, and these beams resembled some beams that I saw in War of the Worlds because these monsters that actually came down from space from the meteors, they now crash landed onto Earth and they were destroying everywhere they targeted, every single location. They had these same type of beams. But the reason why I had to bring up Justice League episode 1 and the reason why I had to talk about the Imperium is because on paper this premise is really interesting, man, but it's the execution that hurts this movie so much. Before I talk about the plot, I need to talk about one disgusting act that this movie was constantly doing in their entire runtime, and that act was doing ad placement, man. And the ad placement they were doing was for Amazon because throughout the movie they were highlighting Amazon, they were advertising Amazon, they were showcasing Amazon, and a big example is at the end of the movie we are looking at the entire world is going to be destroyed, the entire world is panicking, the entire world are getting slaughtered, the entire world are getting overrun by these monsters, and it's up to Will, Mark, Sandra, Faith, and Dave to save the day. But Mark in particular, I'm going to single him out because Mark in this movie, he worked as an Amazon delivery associate, right? And Mark throughout the entire movie was constantly advertising Amazon. You know, he was saying, oh, Amazon has this feature that is very helpful for so and so, but at the end of the movie we are looking at the ad placement for Amazon being amplified on steroids because Mark, he helps to contribute to save the day by sending an Amazon drone, and Will needed this drone because this drone had important data that is needed to stop this invasion, and this data can cause these gigantic monsters, these gigantic hybrid robotic monsters to cannibalize themselves because they found out recently that these monsters can produce blood as they're stealing the data from all of these important locations that harbor data. So this drone, right, it is needed to go from point A to point B. Point B is Will's location, point A is Mark's location, but Mark had to tell Will that the only way this can work is if Will ordered this drone from Amazon. And Mark now went into a little 10-second spiel about how the Amazon delivery process is the best process in the entire world. When I heard that, I wanted to scratch my eyes out, man. I wanted to drop kick my TV, man. I wanted to drive down to wherever this film was produced. I wanted to slap every single writer and producer and director for even thinking that the fans would want to see an ad placement in a movie. Like, bro, what the fuck are we even watching? Why the hell do we need to see an Amazon ad, bro? And that's exactly what happened. Mark was just looking at the camera and he was saying that, oh, this Amazon drone is the best drone in the entire world, is the fastest drone. Trust me, this drone will get to you in time. And the drone did get to Will in time, and this drone actually saved the day because this Amazon drone had the most important data that was needed to cause these gigantic monsters to cannibalize themselves. And that's exactly what happened. So when I saw that, I was like, wow, bro, like that shit is ass. But the plot of this movie, man, this plot, remember, like I said, the premise is interesting. The premise had potential. The premise could have been something that is intriguing for a lot of fans, but the execution was horrible. And Ice Cube is a legend, man. He's a good actor, he's a great rapper, but Ice Cube's acting in this movie was atrocious, man. There are a lot of examples showcasing how Ice Cube's acting really hurt the film, and one example is this, right? So Ice Cube's son, his name is Dave, and Dave later in the movie will be revealed as the master hacker called Disruptor, and Disruptor has been hacking the US government for years or months up until this point, and Will has been trying his hardest to disrupt the Disruptor, but later he'll not eventually know that the Disruptor is his son. But earlier in the movie, right, when the invasion was happening, we see that Dave and every single citizen around the entire city that Dave was currently at that time were all running. They were panicking. They were scared that this invasion is going to destroy them. This invasion is going to destroy everything. So Dave was trying to get cover, but as he was trying to save himself, we see that the recording was distorted, and Will's reaction to this, man, was so ass, because Will, all he said was, yo, Dave, and then he not like put his hand on his head, and he just like kept his hand on his head for like 3 seconds. And I was like, bro, that's not a real reaction to your son potentially getting killed. Look, man, remember, Ice Cube's a legend, but his acting prowess in this movie was not good. There are also a lot of scenes that I'm not even going to say because it'll make this video become so long and become so drawn out and boring, just giving you examples showing how bad Ice Cube's acting was. But man, Ice Cube, he really did not need to take this movie, bro. He really did not need to take the money because this shit was not good, man. But there is a character in this movie that I'm just going to call Phil Coulson because his name Donald Briggs in this movie, I don't care about his name because this movie is so ass. But if you know who Phil Coulson is in the MCU, just know that I'm going to keep calling this nigga Phil, because Phil, he is actually the main villain of the movie. And the reason why he's the main villain of the movie is because for decades the entire US government has been keeping a lot of files hidden from the citizens, and inside these files is something called Project Goliath. And as soon as the internet hit, right, in the 1940s or the 1930s, the government, they found this thing called Goliath, and Goliath is kind of like a doorway or kind of like an alarm or something that can trigger this invasion to happen. And the US has been keeping this hidden from the US citizens, but decades have passed, and now that Phil Coulson is in charge of whatever this organization is inside the US government, Phil Coulson, he is trying his best to take total control of Goliath because he wants to watch over every single person in the United States. He's trying to dismantle everyone's First and Fourth Amendments. So when Phil Coulson actually enacts this plan, he caused this invasion invasion to happen by fully releasing the Goliath documents, and this caused the entire invasion to happen just because Phil wanted to take away our First and Fourth Amendment rights, because he wanted to watch every single thing that every single human in the entire country is doing. And I think he also wanted to do that to the entire world. The invasion has stopped because they cannibalized themselves. We thought that Will died, but Will did not die. Now that the dust have settled, we see that Phil Coulson has gotten arrested and he has been charged for his crimes against humanity. But that's the end of the movie, man. And honestly, bro, this movie is actually the worst movie I saw this entire year, man, because the acting was atrocious. The CGI was horrible. Like, if you're watching this movie and you're looking at these giant robots, there are so many scenes when the CGI just completely looks like it was made in high school or in middle school. It seems that some middle schooler was just drawing this and he now finally turned this drawing into 3D. Then after this middle schooler was trying to perfect this production company that wrote, directed, and is producing War of the Worlds stole this from this middle schooler, and they now released it to the public. And that's how I can perfectly describe the CGI, man. The CGI was unfinished, man, and the acting was atrocious. I even peeped that Roderick from Diary of a Wimpy Kid, he actually played a role as Mark Goodman, and when I saw that, I couldn't help to think to myself that, damn, all of these actors really did not need this money, man. They really should have denied the script. But that's the end of the video, man. This movie was dookie. It was buns, man. Don't watch it, or if you want to watch it to have a laugh, to just laugh at how ass this movie is, you can watch it if you want. But I'm out. Peace.